Welcome to the world of Priesthood Dispatches, where we tell your stories from the front lines of high-demand religion.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. It's party time. Check out the lights in true Priesthood Dispatches fashion. I'm here on my own this evening, so we're just gonna keep it low-key. We're going to look at some of the stories that I've not been able to tell over the last year, and yeah, just see why Priesthood Dispatches is even a thing. So the anniversary date was actually May the 4th, Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. And that was the anniversary of the day that I think I started the Priesthood Dispatches Facebook group. And the whole point in Priesthood Dispatches at the time was that it was going to be just a blog. And that having left the Mormon church a couple of years previous, I was kind of over that angry stage and trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life now and what I had left from Mormonism. So what I did have left were a bunch of stupid stories from being a very young bishop, from being on the High Council, stake order, things like that. And I thought I could put them down in a bit of a blog because I like to write things. And then I was driving on the school run one day and thought Priesthood Dispatches, because they were my priesthood stories from the front lines of high demand religion. A bit like being mentioned in dispatches in the war, you know, kind of not a hero, but you know, maybe. So yeah, Priesthood Dispatches was born, and it was just a blog at first. We can see here. We've got the Priesthood Dispatches website here, and yeah, started as a blog, me telling my stories, and then you telling your stories. So that was May last year. Some people have said, "Oh, the year's gone so fast." I think it seems like it's gone fast because you may not have arrived at the YouTube channel until that started in around September. So still a little while to go for the year mark of the YouTube channel. But speaking of YouTube channels, if you're new to the channel, then please like and subscribe. If you are returning, you are as crazy as I am. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone, for all of your birthday wishes. I'm big for a 1-year-old, I know. So what I thought we'd do is we'd look back at a couple of the interesting stories from the year and then see where we go from there. And the first one that I want to look at is from the first episode of Priesthood Dispatches, and this was with Laura and Julian Heath. Lovely couple, love them. And Laura had a story here, and you can see how far we've come on the channel when you see this. But Laura had a story here about fast and testimony meeting and one of her experiences. Okay, let's go.
So this particular occasion, there was a woman in an older woman, she's about in her 70s, and she was in sacrament meeting, and she got up to bear a testimony. She was clearly a little bit distressed, and she got up to the stand, and she said, "Brothers and sisters, you know, I'm really glad to be here today. But, you know, I've been going through such a difficult time recently. My husband and I we just need your prayers. We need you to pray for us. You know, my husband is injured his scrotum, and as a result of that, it's really affected our relationship. You know, we are finding it difficult in our relationship together, and it's affected his work, it's affected you know, our home life. It's really, so please everyone, can you just pray that his you know, scrotum will be healed soon." She obviously clearly distressed but comforted by the fact that she's got all these prayers that are going to be for her husband's scrotum, and she gets down off the stand, and there's you know, the appropriate silence and shifty sort of looks around. And she goes and sits down next to her husband, who's there. And he then follows her up to the stand and says, I've got one word, and that is sternum.
Fantastic. Sternum. The wonderful cross wires of Fastened Testimony Meeting and oversharing. You will have seen there that the camera footage, the microphones, the lighting, everything has improved massively over the last year. And that's only down to the donations from yourselves. If you do wish to support the show so we can do more cool stuff, then use the link in the description below. But I wanted to go back to the blog and share a story. This one that I just had up on the screen here. I'm not going to read through it all. You can go to mormonpd.org. You can see it at the top here, and you can read all of the stories there. But this one was a particular interesting story from my time as a bishop. And it started one evening when a less active, I guess, inactive member gave me a call. And this was a brother who hadn't been to church for years. But this brother, his kind of, I guess, rub with church was the fact that he felt that he could see the deceased relatives of other people. And obviously, to go to church and say that you see literally dead people and you can carry messages, that's kind of a bad thing Mormon wise, because only the paid, official church people are allowed to do anything cool like that. So yeah, he was ostracized a little bit. So I genuinely believe though that he could see dead people, and I kind of think today that maybe he still can. Some of the stuff that he told me, it was a bit spot on. But he gave me a call and he said that there was a particularly malevolent spirit in his house who wouldn't leave him alone. He couldn't get it to leave. And he'd got a 3-year-old daughter, and it was in his daughter's room constantly, keeping her awake at night. Can me, as bishop, come over and get rid of this unwanted presence? Now, I thought I was amazing. So I was like, yeah, no problem. Went upstairs, put my best priesthood suit on, gave my counselor a call because I thought I'm going to need some backup on this one. Because genuinely, like, if someone had said I've got a ghost, I'd have been like, yeah, all right. But when he said it, I was like, man, I'm going into battle. So we drove over there and we went in the house, and he directed us to upstairs to one of the to his daughter's bedroom, and it was all in darkness. And I said to him, oh, leave the lights off, because we all know that putting the lights on scares ghosties away. So I was like, leave the lights off, and I'll go in. So I go in and I give it the whole arm to the square. In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to leave, and right at that moment, there was an almighty bang. And I was like, oh my gosh, what was that? And I thought I'd made it go in not a very nice way. And I was a bit scared. Turns out the kid in the next room, his oldest son, was having a hard time on the PlayStation and had thrown his remote across the room just at that time. But the story continues. I asked the brother, is the spirit still here? He said, no, it's gone. Now, at this point, we'll call the spirit Cuthbert just because we can. Cuthbert was gone. Said to the brother, okay, let's head downstairs, see what's going on. Went downstairs, and apparently Cuthbert had taken to the corner of the sitting room and was not too impressed and was giving it both barrels in my direction, and he was really upset. So I thought, right, it's time to end this gentleman's stay in the house. So Cuthbert had to go. So we went to the middle of the room. The less active brother knelt down, and me and my companion, my counselor, put our hands on his head and began a priesthood blessing on him and his home to try and help Cuthbert on his way wherever Cuthbert needed to be. But it definitely wasn't in his home that evening. So we gave him the blessing, and during the blessing, my body went rigid, and my hands were shaking, and I was sweating. I couldn't speak. I was giving it the full Joseph Smith, in the grove. The power overtook me, and looking back now, I kind of think that it probably wasn't so much the power of Cuthbert overtaking me. It was probably my ego, and all the stories of Joseph Smith, of the missionaries in England with the legions of demons and different things. So yeah, I got pretty wrapped up in it all. And following the blessing, I said to the brother, "Is Cuthbert still here?" No, Cuthbert had done one. Fantastic. We shook his hand, said our goodbyes, got in the car. Cuthbert was in the car. Okay, I didn't see him, but I felt like I could feel him in the back seat of the car. So we drove on, and I knew that I couldn't take Cuthbert home with me, so we drove down. We were driving down a country lane, and in England, country lanes are very dark and very narrow, very private places. So I pulled over straight away. It was raining a little bit. I said to my counselor, I said, "I need a blessing now, straight away." So I get out of the car. I'm in the middle of the road. I just thought, it's got to be done. So I knelt down in the rain, and my counselor came over and facing me, placed his hands on my head and started giving me a blessing. And we were both crying and really, yeah, we're really into it. And then the whole area started to light up. It was amazing, like almost like noonday, and the ambiance all around me started to light up. And I was thinking, wow, this is a truly spiritual, like, climax of my time. And then he heard a car horn, and looked up, and there was an elderly couple in a car who had come across two suit-clad men in the street, one kneeling before the other, both crying, probably wondering what was going on in that country lane that evening. But Cuthbert went. So that was the story of seeing dead people. But you can go and read that in a more comedic fashion on the blog, mormonpd.org. And yeah, there's loads more like that, Saving Private Brian and all sorts. But back to your stories for the evening. So we got the blog, and we started the YouTube channel, and then we started to get some more heavy hitters onto the channel. And I guess one of these that I loved was Paul Toscano of the September 6th. And Paul Toscano was amazing because what he did was he didn't say, "What do you want me to kind of say?" I'd done some research on him, and I knew the general gist of things, but there's so much that's happened to Paul in his life that to actually dissect everything, I'd need 6 months to research and come up with a really thorough set of interview questions. So what Paul did is he gave me a bullet pointed list of all these random occurrences in his life, of about 20 things, and we went through it, and it was amazing. But one of these things that, yeah, I didn't quite get at first. And when you think of Paul Toscano in the September 6th, you think scholars, you think, activists, really serious people. But Paul was amazing, and this was, yeah, one of his gems. Let's hear it.
The one about the orgasmatron was really weird. I'm not going to mention these people's names because I'm going to try not to mention. So I got, this was back in the early 80s, I got a knock on my door in Orem, and these people I know come in, and they're telling me that they've come with information that they now know how to get revelation from the Lord every time. Okay. And I said, well, okay. And the way they do it was there was 3 couples. They'd go to the temple with a particular question that had to be answered yes or no. And they go to the temple, and if the and the one fellow was apparently the one who was gifted with getting the revelation. And the way it would happen would be this: sometime during the temple ceremony, if the answer to their question was yes, he would get an erection.
Oh my God.
And if the answer was no, he wouldn't.
Oh my gosh. So poor Toscano laying it out there. And that had to be one of the weirdest kind of Mormon things. I know at the minute, Under the Banner of Heaven is hot. And I've watched the first 3 episodes and it's weird. But it's that kind of thinking that breeds these special moments that people have. How did they ever connect the temple ceremony with that? You know what I mean? So that was one of the weirder ones. We've also had member of the FLDS, the Work, who Clayne Wademan. Unfortunately, Clayne has been diagnosed recently with cancer. Clayne, if you're watching, please get well soon. We loved your contribution, speaking to us about how even today there are still 80-year-olds marrying 18-year-olds in polygamy, and how they are running out of young women to marry off to their younger men, because all of the older men are marrying those young women. Okay. Moving on to, I get stories through on the email that I can't get through all the time, so I've picked a few that, yeah, I've just not had a chance to get to, which I think will be of interest. So the first one is from Derek Evanson, and Derek's titled his email "Black Panthers Attack LDS Institute." And he says, "True stories of Sir Geoffrey the Brave, aka the Hound Dog." So he says, "The following was told to me by John Lund, former Institute of Religion instructor and author of The Church and the Negro, 1969. John Lund was an Institute of Religion instructor in Seattle, Washington during the late 1960s and early 1970s. This was when Jeffrey R. Holland, now a Mormon apostle, was director of the Seattle LDS Institute of Religion next to the University of Washington. The following happened at a time when the black football players of the University of Washington refused to play BYU because BYU was run by a white racist church. I think this was 1971-72. Lund told me this was in his office when he taught the Seattle Institute for the second time in 1990. So Lund's a big name as well. So it'd be interesting if this was, backed up. But he goes on. He told me that back in the early 1970s, black football players at the University of Washington were refusing to play against BYU because of the racist policies of the Mormon Church, which owned a controlling stake in BYU, pretty much all of it. At the time, the church still banned blacks from its priesthood, which every Mormon male aged 12 and over gets, and it banned them from the temples. Blacks could still be baptized into the church, but go home. This I've never experienced this because I'm too young. Let me know if this was the case. But he said they could go home or wait in the foyer while priesthood meeting took place. So I never knew that people, they wouldn't let them have the priesthood. But from what Derek's saying here, they wouldn't even let them go to priesthood, like the lesson, the meeting. I mean, for me, that would be a good thing, not being forced to go to the priesthood lesson. But hey, so he goes on, like the women of the church, they could not touch the sacrament tray while it was being passed around by 12 or 13-year-old Mormon deacons. I never saw that. Needless to say, the black Mormon population was tiny, probably no more than a dozen men, most inactive. The trustees of the University of Washington decided to hold a public debate over the issue of whether to cut off relations with BYU over this, One of the trustees was black. They contacted the church in Salt Lake, which had no comment. Surprise. Then they contact the Seattle LDS Institute of Religion, then headed by Jeffrey R. Holland. Holland decided he was going to cowboy it without church approval. So he sent John Lund, who had written The Church and the Negro, to calmly explain things to the trustees and the over 1,000 students there to hear the debate. Brave man. A number of UW black football players spoke first, saying that the Mormons were worse than the Klan and they filled the ranks of the KKK. This was generally believed and common knowledge among African Americans at the time, and taught black folks don't have souls. Finally, John Lund was invited to respond. Boos and threats came from the audience. The trustees quieted the crowd. But every time Lund tried to speak, the black trustee shot up in his chair and shouted, "Why are we listening to this man? He's a racist. Why are we listening to him?" Good question. A white trustee who served as a moderator would ask the black trustee to sit down and let Lund say a few words. But as soon as Lund began to speak, the black trustee would shoot back up from his seat and shout, "Why are we even listening to this man? Why? Why are we giving racists a voice here? Are we crazy? We are crazy to even listen to this man." Man, that guy has some guts, being the only black trustee, on the board, absolutely standing up for what was right. So with that, the crowd would go wild and shout and scream and hurl insults at Lund. This continued, and Lund was not allowed to speak. The black man said, "We must be crazy even to let this racist speak." Well, he didn't. Anyway, the audience erupts into whistles and applause, so Lund shouted, "Well, you must all be crazy, so I'm leaving." Wow. How to make friends and influence people. And he walked towards the exit with pieces of paper, sometimes spit, and booze coming from the audience. The next day, the Seattle Post what a newspaper name this is. The Seattle Post Intelligencer. Can anyone confirm that? A newspaper reported the incident with the headline, "Mormon priest calls black UW trustee crazy at public debate." He did though, didn't he? The Seattle chapter of the Black Panthers read this article and decided to get some payback. They took crowbars and bats and went to the Seattle Institute in 2 cars on a Monday. Students came into Jeffrey R. Holland's office screaming bloody murder, and Holland came out and saw the black men with weapons piling in from the front of the Institute. He shouted to Lund, "John, you lock the front doors while I get the students out the back." I can see the taffy pulling out. So Holland bravely led the white Mormon students out the back door. Bravely led them. He bravely ran away out the back door while Lund was holding the front door closed. Lund could not lock the front doors because the Black Panthers were already trying to get them open, and the doors had to be completely shut before they could be locked. No surprise. So Lund was in a tug of war with about 8 Black Panthers. This is where the strength of the priesthood needs to come in. He was in a tug of war with about 8 Black Panthers, armed with crowbars and baseball bats. No guns that he could see from the front door. Holland was leading the way out the back door. No surprises there either. Lund told me he said a vocal prayer, "Heavenly Father, please protect us in the name of Jesus Christ, amen." At that very point, so this is where the miracle's going to happen, because remember, this is Lund telling the story to Derek. At that very point, Lund told me, one black man said to the others, "Man, we got the wrong place. This here, oh my gosh, this is so bad. This here ain't the Mormon church. This here is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Say so right here," pointing to the Institute of Religion sign. Now, earlier in this story, I'm sure Lund had gone to prove how much of a how racist he wasn't. But he's telling this story, if this is the case. And at this point, I think he's saying that the Black Panthers were dumb because they didn't connect Mormon church with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So all the black men looked at the sign and said, shoot, we got to the wrong place. Let's get the fetch out of here. So they all climbed the 2 cars and left. Lund then closed the doors all the way, locked them, and then went to the back to find Holland cowering behind a car with a small group of white students. And Derek says, this is exactly what John Lund told me in his office in 1990. Lund later retired and gave tours of Book of Mormon locations in Belize and South Mexico for TBMs. I cannot testify that it is true because I was not there to witness it, but this is exactly what Lund told him. Funnily enough, giving tours of Book of Mormon locations in Belize and South Mexico. I would love to see the tour guide for that because I am pretty sure that the church doesn't believe anymore that there were any Book of Mormon sites in Belize or southern Mexico. Okay. And one more before we go. We're going to keep it short tonight. But this one came in September. And it's been on my mind for so long, from Sarah Howard. And yeah, this is amazing. Sarah is from New Zealand. Fantastic. People hear me in New Zealand. And Sarah says she was born in the Mormon church, second youngest of 6 siblings, 4 older sisters, 1 younger brother. That was a fun house. And mom and dad, both from non-religious backgrounds. This is the worst hitchhiking story. They converted as newlyweds after picking up hitchhiking missionaries. Joy. So she tells a story. There was a time our branch president and his whole family suddenly stopped coming to church for a whole month or 2, and he was weirdly released in his absence. Then one fast Sunday, he turned up out of the blue. The branch I grew up in was in a very small town. Our town really only had one place where most of the men worked, and that meant that from time to time, all the priesthood leaders would be working on a Sunday. This was one of those Sundays. So Bishop's not there. None of the normal priesthood leaders are there. And the newly ex-branch president knew it and seized his opportunity. This already sounds like an epic ex-Mormon yage. He got up from the congregation and started an amazing rant. The only priesthood holder there that day, a lovely old 70-year-old brother, tried to stand and stop him, but he was no match. No match. The ex-branch president spoke for at least 20 minutes. No one could stop him. At the time, it felt like an evil anti-Mormon rant. Go branch president. On reflection, he was just relaying a whole bunch of shocking truths. The thing I remember most about the whole event was that at the final point, my mum stood up in the congregation and yelled back to the ex-branch president, telling him we weren't going to all just sit there and listen to his rubbish. She then marched all the women and children in the congregation down to the primary room to sing hymns, because that's what you should do when truth is spoken, leaving the poor ex-branch president to rant to the poor old boy. Fun times. Then there was another fast Sunday when a sister got up to the pulpit reeking of marijuana and obviously a bit high. Now, why was I never in any of these meetings? Because that sounds like the best testimony meeting. She started on an amazing sermon and kept pointing out how everyone in our town was evil and really, really needed saving, especially us lot in the chapel. We really need saving. She could foresee a time soon when the volcanoes we lived around were going to erupt and swallow us all up. She was bringing it heavy. We were because they were so damn evil. She then raised both her arms in the air and started calling out to God like a banshee, calling for him to come down and save us before we were destroyed. Small town branches wards have the very best fast Sundays. You just get so bored with the usual limited rotation of speakers, newness, weirdness. Weirdness is at least different and hella entertaining. Oh my gosh. Um, Sarah goes on to list. I really need to get Sarah on for an episode. A member of the bishopric having a psychotic episode after a visit to the temple that turned into a huge cross-country police chase, with him smashing through other vehicles, causing injury to avoid police road spikes, and finally ending with him locked away in a high-security mental ward for the criminally insane, where my dad paid him a visit and took me and my younger brother along to cheer him up. Yeah. Sarah, if you hear this, you need to come on. I will contact you soon because we need to go through these stories and hear them from the horse's mouth. Okay. So, PD. PD is now, yeah, this is what we are. We'll be moving forwards with the YouTube. We've now got a presence on TikTok, Facebook, obviously, and Instagram and Twitter. We will be, we're slowly working our way through and writing a book called Meet the Schmooners. You can no longer meet the Mormons, but you'll be able to meet the Schmooners, a Mormon family who have all of these wonderful experiences, all in one book for you to read. But I just wanted to, yeah, take half an hour this evening to say thank you to everyone for all the support you've given me over the last year. Thank you for all the input. Thank you for your stories, because that's what this is all about. It's about finding a little bit of healing from our time at church through humor, through just having a good laugh at ourselves in a very English way. But yeah, thank you very much. If you feel you can contribute, the links in the description below. But otherwise, please share the PD channel wherever you can. It'd be great to get to 850 subscribers in the next couple of weeks. We're about 30 or 40 off. So if you're not subscribed, please do so. But for now, for me, from this evening, I'll let you all go. Oh, and I mustn't forget, from the War Office here where I am, it is not Mother's Day, but I've got it written down because in the United States today, it is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all of my listeners in the United States. I hope you have all treated your mother, or if you are a mother or a sister, you have had a fantastic day. But for now, thank you very much. I will let you go, and I'll see you next week. See ya.